Hello, my name is Rachel Rigolino, and I am an instructor in the English department at the State University of New York at New Paltz. During the summer, I teach two fully online literature courses. This past summer, the summer of 2012, I taught the short story for the first time. I also taught the novel, a course which I have offered online since 2003. The students in my courses are primarily from SUNY New Paltz, although a significant number are from other schools. As I teach courses that fulfill general education requirements for the State University of New York, many of my students actually wind up not being English majors. In this portfolio presentation, I will review the key learning points I have taken away from the Sloan Foundation course and the 3 workshops that I have taken in the course design and delivery track. I hope to demonstrate how what I have learned has informed my course design, my teaching, and my process of reflection. This list provides an overview of my certificate work. As you can see, I started in January 2012 while I was on winter break. I was concerned about beginning the spring term while still being enrolled in the foundation course, but thankfully the course was designed in such a way, front-loaded in terms of discussions and readings, so that the final week was not overwhelming. Because I wanted to concentrate on course design and delivery, I chose electives in these areas. The first elective, Improving Student Engagement in Online Courses, was an important topic to me. As I've discovered over the years, online students must be truly engaged in the course throughout the semester. There is no chance for them to, quote, sit in the back of the classroom and tread water for a few weeks. Every week they must post replies to discussion questions, take quizzes, and otherwise be fully present. Using, reusing, and sharing educational resources was wonderful, and this workshop introduced me to some new resources as well as reminded me of sites such as Merlot. The final workshop, Excuse Me, Professor, What Motivates You?, was valuable in that it made me reassess my reasons for teaching, and it also provided me with some tools and strategies for motivating students, or rather, helping students to motivate themselves. You will notice that I took a break between April and August. This is because I was teaching my 2 online courses in the novel and the short story. More about this later. During the first week of my foundation course, I became intrigued by the fact that I was on the other end of the online classroom dynamic. The very fact of being a student opened my eyes to what the experience is like. For example, I became obsessed with deadlines and worries about whether I was contributing enough to class discussion. I fast-forwarded through some of the videos, and yes, I will admit this, usually because they didn't hold my interest or because I had deadlines in my workday. Now, in most of these cases, I did go back and actually replayed sections I had previously skipped. I also was guilty of multitasking, something I tell my students not to do. And I would perhaps open email while participating in class discussion and listen to streaming media. The experience of having to juggle work and school demands was enlightening, giving me a better understanding not only of why students might be late with assignments, but also why they might be misreading directions or misunderstanding information. In the foundation course, we learned how important the first week of class is, and how time must be given to establishing an online community. I normally take this approach in my classes, using the first week for introductions, but I never had students do much more than, post maybe 2 or 3 sentences about themselves. However, I noticed how much I, as a student, enjoyed seeing my classmates' photographs. So this summer, I required students to create presentations about themselves that included visuals in order to engage their interests from the very beginning of the class. Sloan stresses assessment, so I was not surprised to find that the foundation course had us review and choose a rubric. After reviewing the choices, I decided upon the Quality Matters rubric for a few reasons. First, it is easy to understand and follow. The standards are explicit, and I can imagine how easy it could be used for peer review. A one-page, easily printable handout is great. Second, I was impressed with the way in which QM aligns specific aspects of the course with standards. It was very clear. And third, after doing some research and reading other posts, I could see that QM is widely used, and I wanted to use a rubric that has proven itself to be valuable. I used the Quality Matters rubric in redesigning my syllabus for the novel, and also when creating the syllabus for the new online course I taught this summer in the short story. Working with my mentor, I fine-tuned some of my objectives to make them more measurable in terms of the assignments I created. This slide shows the objectives for my course syllabus for the novel. Although I've been teaching the course for several years, my objectives were rather vague. The previous syllabus included objectives such as, quote, "In this course, students will examine novels from various schools or movements, focusing primarily on short American texts. Historical and literary context will be examined." Well, while this may be an admirable aim or objective, it did not explain how exactly I would measure or assess how well a student had met this objective. I thank my classmates and mentor for helping me state my objectives in more concrete, measurable ways. Throughout the month-long Foundations course, we were provided with some wonderful resources, and one of them is featured above. Karen Swan's instructional booklet on relationships between interactions and learning in online environments. As someone who has been teaching online since 1999, I know how important the instructor's presence is to students who never see their teacher in person. As my course is centered on asynchronous discussion, most of my communication with students has to do with what they are posting on discussion board. I post highlights from discussion 3 times a week on the front page of Blackboard. This means that the average student who signs on 3 to 4 times a week will see excerpts from his or her writing as well as from his or her peers, featured in the middle of the screen. Through this practice, I hope to indicate to students that their posts to one another and to me are being read and are essential to the course. What I learned from the Sloan course was that there seems to be ample evidence that creating a sense of community in which student contributions are valued is important to student learning. In other words, my instincts that this relationship existed was confirmed by studies by Bell and others. The key change I made in my approach to my online presence may sound rather simple, but they were big steps for me. I created an introductory screencast that actually featured a photograph or two of me, along with narration. In addition, each week I created an introductory video about the stories and writers we would be discussing. I did not find an effective way to assess whether my screencast made a difference in student engagement, mostly because I did not have any repeat students this summer. In other words, I wish I had had a student, as I sometimes do, who was taking a second course with me, so that I could have asked him or her about the difference the screencast made. Sloan also taught me that synchronous exchanges can be valuable. Our Friday real-time meetings via Blackboard Collaborate were often insightful, but I am not yet convinced they would play an important enough role in my course to build them into my schedule. Perhaps next summer I will decide to keep virtual office hours at least once a week. I had been eager to learn about Web 2.0 tools when I signed up for the Sloan Certificate course, and I look forward to week 5, during which we were provided with readings and resources about free or low-cost tools. As a result of my earlier reading about student engagement, I chose to experiment with Screencast-O-Matic and SlideShare to create weekly messages for students. I learned later in the certificate program, when discussing workload management, that these resources can be reused if one is careful not to refer to dates and other time-sensitive information. At first, I was careful to script all of my slide narrations, but after a couple of tries, I realized that writing out every word I wanted to say was not necessary. I also discovered that YouTube has a closed captioning feature, so that students who are hard of hearing can follow my narrations or print out a transcript later. On a side note, I noticed after reading my own transcripts how often I used fillers such as and I did try to work on this area of public speaking with limited success. I will discuss more about how I incorporated emerging technologies when I get to the elective section of this presentation. So, as I noted earlier, I'm interested both in the topic of student engagement as well as in new technologies. To that end, I signed up for my first workshop, one that focused on these two issues. During the course of the workshop on improving student engagement in online courses, I decided that I would make the first week introductions in both my courses in the short story, as well as the novel, more lively by asking students to include images when introducing themselves. I also worked in a degree of choice. The Sloan Foundation course stressed permitting student choice, so my students were allowed to use a variety of software, and they did not, in fact, have to upload photographs of themselves if they chose not to. I have included my directions in the slide above. The student choices in my courses were interesting. 7 students created PowerPoints, 9 created PowerPoints and then uploaded them to SlideShare, 8 chose to make Prezi presentations, 4 ventured into creating Glockster posters, and 3 settled for Microsoft Word. That all of the students did not create PowerPoints was a surprise to me, underscoring the importance of allowing a degree of student choice and permitting students to showcase their abilities and preferences. Anecdotally, there seemed to be a livelier sense of discussion in both courses during the first week, although it would take me weeks of parsing sentences and word choices to assess my evidence more objectively and more fully. As I noted earlier when discussing the foundation course, I was determined to create weekly messages for my 2 summer courses. I did not reach my goal in this area, creating screencasts that I uploaded to YouTube only for weeks 1 through 4 in the short story, but not for weeks 5 through 7. In the novel, I did include an Animoto video for each book we read, but I had created these before my Sloan coursework even began. Students seemed to enjoy the videos I made, as I found from reading the final course reflections. One student, for example, wrote, quote, "I found the videos informative and generally well put together," end quote. However, as a student, I sometimes fast-forwarded parts of introductory videos, so I'm not sure how one can tell whether my students also engaged in this practice once they clicked on a video. Again, assessing the effectiveness of my series of videos is proving to be a bit difficult. Anecdotally, they did seem to have been successful in creating a better sense of instructor presence. In addition, as a student in an online course myself, I know that I appreciated being able to hear my instructor's voice, and I assume this held true for most of my students. While I did not provide a welcome video for the later weeks, I did direct students to professionally made videos about Langston Hughes and our other writers. By summer 2013, I hope to have my own original screencast overviews ready to be played during the remaining weeks of the course, weeks 5 through 7. Student choice came up as a topic throughout my foundation course in all 3 electives. It was discussed in a variety of contexts, from student engagement to student accessibility and learning styles. This summer, I assigned a student blog to my students enrolled in the short story as a creative alternative to a standard midterm, but gave my students enrolled in the novel even more choice. They could choose between creating a blog or a Glockster poster. Interestingly, 9 out of 14 students enrolled in the novel chose Glockster posters. Now I wish that I had provided the students in the short story the same degree of choice. I asked the students who created Glogs to reflect on their experience. Here is a quote, used with permission, from one of the students. The student wrote, "I thought this project was an interactive and creative way to get our minds thinking more concretely. This project allowed me as a student to think outside the box and use the creative part of my brain. I enjoyed focusing on one specific character and analyzing that character more in depth. The most difficult part about this project was figuring out the website. Everything was done by trial and error. It was hard to place everything in the perfect way and choose color combinations, wording, and images that suit the character. These comments suggest that providing students with more choices in terms of assignments leads at least some to be more creative and may, as a result, keep them more engaged in the course. In the workshop on student engagement, some of us discussed the role of course aesthetics. We noted that making a course not only easy to navigate, intuitive, but also pleasing to the eye is important in terms of keeping students interested in the material. Before taking the Sloan course, I was already a bit attuned to making my course easy to get around and pleasant to look at. Blackboard is a bit clunky to customize, but I typically create a banner which remains at the top of my page. This summer, I included images throughout the course to enliven the basic course presentation. In the Sloan Foundations course, I learned about the importance of redundancy and consistency. I was careful, therefore, to maintain the same order in which I presented the information. In other words, while the visuals changed, along with the writers, the order in which the information and activities appeared did not change. In spite of having taught online since 1999, I realize now that I have not been especially savvy in terms of utilizing online resources such as Merlot, although I do go to favorite sites such as poets.org and Bartleby. Instead, when I am looking for something to supplement my course, I typically go out into the wild web, searching for PowerPoints or videos. I did recently learn about TED, so I visited that site. Of course, when looking for material, I have come across bad information, poorly presented information, erroneous information, etc. This worries me because while I may know that a PowerPoint about the Harlem Renaissance, for example, presents incorrect facts, or that a PowerPoint about commas uses commas incorrectly, will students or even will some instructors realize this? Lack of quality control concerns me when it comes to OERs. While instructors may be more savvy about using reputable collections of material, I wonder about students. Sometimes if the presentation is fairly good but has some errors or updates that are needed, I will edit the PowerPoint myself and use it, giving credit to the original author. Other times I just recoil in horror and click away from the site. This summer I found a lot of wonderful background videos about our authors via Films on Demand. This database is accessible via our campus library, and I received a lot of positive feedback from students about the video collection. Because I become so adept at creating screencasts and uploading them to YouTube, I included directions about how to access assigned videos. These screencasts must have been effective because I had only sporadic emails from students asking for further clarification about how to access videos or about which videos to watch. So that was certainly something that was very rewarding and clearly paid off. Now, my final workshop was, "Excuse me, Professor, what motivates you?" Because I took this workshop after I was finished teaching my online courses, I did not incorporate any of what I learned directly into the novel and the short story. However, it provided me some space and time to reflect on my personal goals as an educator and to understand why I am motivated to undertake certain activities and how I remain motivated enough to complete them, or not. Like most of the other people in my workshop, I determined that helping others ultimately motivates me as a professional. Digging a bit deeper, I also discovered that this impetus to help others is a deep part of my religious faith and upbringing. However, monetary reward is also very important, and this is perhaps the primary reason that I, quote-unquote, volunteer to teach during the summer. How might this self-knowledge benefit my students? First, I plan to explicitly ask them at the beginning of the summer semester why they are taking my course. I've never asked this question, although it does seem an obvious one to pose. Some students volunteer this information when they introduce themselves to the class, but others do not. Getting insight into what forces are motivating students. Are they taking my course to graduate early, save money, catch up, fulfill prerequisites, complete GE requirements? Should help me to better meet their individual needs, or at least better understand them. I also think the workshop materials provided to us will be useful in my work during the regular semester with first-year students. Many of them do not yet have clear life goals, and they could benefit from some of the quizzes and recommendations we were given. While a young person may not yet know his or her ultimate goals, she can set achievable short-term goals, whether it be to earn a B in a particular class or set aside time every day for preparing for midterms. As was pointed out during this workshop, receiving feedback from another person is often key in remaining motivated. I do provide feedback to students at least 3 times a week, highlighting particular points made in class discussion twice a week, and then providing a grade and comments at the end of a discussion. I place the discussion highlights on the first page and the announcements page of Blackboard. The announcements section takes up approximately 3/4 of the computer screen, so students are shown how much I am valuing their discussion board posts. And if you can see the slide there, I highlight the student names in red, and then what they've written is in a different color, usually blue. I asked my students in their final reflections on the class to assess my process of providing feedback. The majority of the responses were positive. Below were some comments, reproduced with permission, about my practice of highlighting individual posts. For example, one wrote, "I appreciated the format in which the feedback was given as well. The featured highlights of questions and comments at the end of each novel was interesting to read. It was always nice to see my own name in there when it cropped up, and if it weren't for this method of winding up each section, I might have missed some of the best answers and comments of my classmates." Another student wrote, "The overview lectures consolidated everyone's responses and allowed the instructor to comment on the work as well." And then finally, another student said, "I particularly enjoyed the postings on Blackboard regarding the class's observations. I look forward to reading the insights that were posted and the synopsis of what you thought. While I may say there were a few times I did not agree, I valued looking at another perspective." Another interesting part of this workshop I found was thinking about the course and the course schedule and maintaining motivation. Of course, requiring a final essay means that students will have a lot of work at the end of the semester. However, in the short story course especially, I did make more of an effort to complete most of the discussion early in the semester, as you can see from this partial look at the syllabus. When both the students and I were more likely to have energy and be motivated to complete the work. I also incorporated a bit of a break, about a halfway to 2/3 of the way through the course. Because the midterm assignment was creative in both courses, blogs and glogs, I think the students could unwind a bit and catch their breath, so to speak. It is more difficult to front-load the novel because we have to get through 6 of them during the summer, and the discussion must be spread out more. However, there was a midterm break in that course from discussion as well in week 5, when they were given 5 days to write and post their blogs instead of taking part in discussion board. In terms of my future goals, I would like to find ways to collect more quantitative and qualitative assessment data about particular aspects of my courses. In addition to using course tracking tools, I would like to learn more about how to create anonymous surveys and perhaps even ask my campus Office of Institutional Research to conduct an online focus group at the end of the summer session. Because I am now a Sloan member, I feel more confident about my ability to stay current when it comes to technology and to research. Before taking the foundation course and workshops, I was too overwhelmed in a sense to pick up a journal or do much research about best practices. Sloan collects and organizes material in such a way that makes it accessible to instructors like me who are interested in technology but are not necessarily techies or PhD candidates in online instructional delivery and design. I want to keep taking workshop courses and bring back the information I am learning to my colleagues on campus. I also would love to write an article about my experiences using Glockster with literature students. Glockster is considered more useful in K through 12, but I think there is a role for it in higher education, even only as an icebreaker or perhaps a low-stakes writing assignment. So, it has been 8 months since I began this journey towards my Sloan certificate, and I have learned more than I expected. When I began this presentation, I pointed out the value just in assuming the role of a student in an online class. I now more fully understand what my typical students are going through and how they quote-unquote see an online course. A well-designed course in which the instructor maintains a consistent, thoughtful presence is essential to student success. Sloan workshops underscored the point that course design and delivery are at the heart of an effective online course. While all courses should be thoughtfully designed, there is more room in face-to-face courses for digressions or even disorganized lectures. Students in online courses do not have the luxury, necessarily, of approaching an instructor after a class and asking, can you explain the connection among Marx, Hemingway, and your dog more fully? Or, when is that 20-page paper due? Yes, email serves as a wonderful tool for posting follow-up questions, but a course should be thoughtfully enough designed so that students rarely use email to ask instructors to clarify directions or to restate core course content. Instructor presence is crucial, and I am excited to see how my online courses have been transformed through my newly acquired ability to make screencasts. Although I will likely reuse many of the ones I uploaded to YouTube, I can also appreciate the fact that students may want to know I have taken the time to create new ones, especially during those first crucial weeks of a course. While recycling some course material is always necessary, instructors should be wary of mindlessly reusing material. And this point brings me to my final thought about what I have learned by taking the foundation course and workshops, namely the importance of ongoing assessment and reflection. Until I made the commitment to getting a Sloan certificate, I made only half-hearted attempts at assessing, reflecting, and revising my online courses. Sloan provided the structure I needed to engage in all these processes. As a result, I am a more thoughtful teacher, and my students have benefited. Thank you very much.